welcome to the CrackOn podcast, hosted by me, John Saunders. CrackOn!
Hey guys, welcome to another series, which is awesome news of the CrackOn podcast, hosted by myself, John Saunders. So I'm kicking off the series with an absolute gentleman. Just a really nice guy. We connected via my brother, so Dave Saunders. There's a little shout out for you. Through lockdown, we've just got on like a house on fire. So he used to be the entrepreneur acceleration manager within Natwest, and decided during lockdown to just go on his own and just crack on. He's got a total crack on attitude. So he's now the founder of AJ Entrepreneur Coaching. And without further ado, I'm going to welcome in Andrew Jones. Morning, Andrew. How you doing, buddy?
Morning, John. I'm good, thank you. Pleasure to be here this morning speaking with you.
Yeah, great, mate. Thank you ever so much for taking the time to jumping on.
Yeah, no problem. Got a bright, sunny Wednesday morning, so I couldn't think of spending my time anywhere else than speaking to you, mate.
Mate, you stayed after your gritted teeth. I love that. So yeah, thanks ever so much for coming on the CrackOn podcast. So let's crack on with the first few questions then, mate. What does CrackOn mean to you?
It's a good question, John. I was thinking yesterday, I got my thoughts together before coming on here, because I thought you may ask me something along those lines. And I think it means a number of different things, really. I think when I think about CrackOn, it's getting stuff done, it's action, really. And I think it's not procrastinating. I think one of the things that's really important, though, which I've seen to be able to crack on, is that you need clarity. If you don't have clarity, it's very hard to crack on. So there needs to be some prep before that. But I think it also, I think it means seizing opportunities, if anything. Funnily enough, in past, a friend of mine, a family friend of mine, uses a very similar term, and it is effectively crack on. And before I took a job a number of years ago in Natwest, I wasn't sure if I could do the job, if being totally honest. And there was a bit of that imposter syndrome, inner critic. And she was like, well, what's the worst that can happen? Just crack on, give it a go. And I think it's that seizing opportunities and just doing things that you want to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that example, mate, as well. I think that's it's funny when someone else says that to you as well, isn't it? You think, yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, and I think it's more like, sometimes, some days you wake up and you're not particularly motivated, but if you crack on, if you take action, that then leads to motivation. So crack on. Yeah, you don't actually have to be particularly motivated to do it, but I think it's just a sense of getting something done.
Yeah, Joe, I had one of those mornings this morning, and I just had to get up and go for a run. So yeah, exactly that, mate. Actually, I just do you know what? I cannot be bothered this morning. And we all get them. We all get them, don't we?
Yeah, the days that count, though.
Yeah. So the second one then. So have you got a particular person or an idol or someone in your life, like a mentor, that you look up to, and why?
I think from an idol point of view, it's not business related. It's more it's actually from the sports world. And it's more local, really. So it was Peter Whittingham. Big Cardiff City supporter. Yeah. Throughout my childhood growing up, I'd always go to Cardiff City games with my dad. Been a big part of my life, either going home and away. And unfortunately, tragically, Peter Whittingham was no longer with us. But when I look back at unbelievable footballer, incredibly talented, but off the pitch was just a true gentleman. And luckily I managed to meet him a couple of times. He's just very down to earth, but it's not just him as a person. I think it's what I associate him with is why I see him as an idol. When I look back at when Cardiff made the FA Cup semi-final and eventually the final back in 2008, he was a key part of that team. The playoffs when we beat Leicester away and he scored that free kick. And many goals along the way when we got promoted, and many wonder goals. And I just associate that with growing up and good times, really. And how far away we are from that right now. I think you probably took a lot of things for granted before COVID, and going to a football game, you never thought that would be one of them. But
no, true. Totally, mate. Totally. And I take it from the Cardiff City scenario. Funny enough, you're in the realms of royalty. I actually interviewed Russell Slade on Monday as well for the podcast.
Right, Christ, brilliant, fantastic.
Great guy. Yeah, lovely, humble guy. Just and talked more about those individuals, those people in the game, and that dressing room. And it's such an insightful game as well for that. But I love that. I love that person. I think Whittingham, very, like you said, sadly, unfortunately, isn't here anymore. But what a nice way to look at it, mate.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I look forward to listening to that one, that one, John, when it gets released.
Oh, it's a good one, mate. It's a good one. I've got to be honest. I love it. And it's really good. I can't wait to share it. So let's tell everyone, let's go back a bit then. Let's go maybe Cardiff boy, born and bred, and where does it all start?
Yeah, so I haven't strayed far from home. So Cardiff boy, born and bred. I grew up locally, went to Cardiff High. So growing up, always really interested in my sport, always really interested in business as well. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think there's a lot of pressure on people when they're growing up at the age of 15, 16. I don't know many people who know what they want to do. Yeah. You kind of I felt like I was going with the flow a little bit. You go through, you do your A-levels just to buy a little bit of time in the hope that you will know what you want to do further down the line.
Yeah.
So did that, then went through to study business management at Cardiff Uni, kind of to just leave my options open a little bit. Banking had always been in my family. My mum worked for a bank, my dad worked for a bank, and I eventually went into that and worked for Barclays over in Bristol for a year or so, and then eventually ended up in Natwest, and that's how our paths crossed, really.
Yeah, great. Going back that one thing you said just then about not knowing what you want to do. There's we're obviously going to go into the coaching world in a second and talk about what you're doing now. But I think there's people my age, my and older that don't know what still want. What sort of any advice you'd have for those sort of people that really want to? You've obviously dealt with a lot of businesses as well and companies, and
I think the most important thing is. I know it's a cliche, but it's follow your passion. And that's what's worked for me really in the end is I feel very fortunate that at a fairly young age, I found out what I really wanted to do in life. Yeah. I've always been interested in performance. I've always been interested in sport. And I've always been interested in business. And I never knew there was a job out there that could meet all three of those things in a kind of a roundabout way. And I think you just take one step at a time. You get that one job, which allows you to get another job, which then opens up doors further down the line. And that's how I ended up, as you know, well, for the listeners out there, I worked at the Natwest Entrepreneur Accelerator Hub. So Natwest had 12 accelerator hubs across the UK, which every 6 months they bring on 80 businesses to help them grow their business. And my key part or role within that was to coach 40 of those businesses every 6 months. And if I'm being honest, it really didn't feel like work. And I think if you ever get that feeling in something and it doesn't feel like work, and it's when you get up out of bed on a Monday morning, you enjoy doing, that's when you know you're kind of in the right place.
I love that. So, also, there's that bit about, a lot of, you have got to fail. You have got to try. Someone told me a really funny thing yesterday, and you've got to kiss a load of frogs before you find your princess. And I think that scenario, that saying is exactly true, isn't it? You've got to just keep going. And I agree with you with your passion. And actually, what was it like then? Just go back to that Natwest. Now you mentioned it. It must have been a really fulfilling job to see so many sort of businesses come into the market. And what did you really love about it?
I loved. So the first time I went into that office, the Accelerator Hub, you can't put your finger on it, but it was the energy in the room. I think that was what I felt. It was a really optimistic, positive place where if there was a problem, yes, the problem's there, you focus on it, but what's the solution? Yeah. It was almost like, what can we do about it? And I think what was so fulfilling is it was the variety of businesses and the variety of people that I worked with. So by the 3 years I'd done that role, I'd one-to-one coached over 300 businesses from Wales to Southwest, and eventually through COVID virtually, I was working with people in London.
Brilliant.
And it was what I enjoyed. Yes, the business was important, but what I really enjoyed was working with people. It's all about relationships. Yeah. And I even think in the way the world's going now, and what's happening and how accessible markets are now. You look at things like Zoom, you can build relationships with people all over the world, but the key part in that whole thing is relationships. I still think that's one of the most important things in business.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we mentioned just now about, playing golf, and, obviously I know you're a keen golfer. I wouldn't want to play you yet, like I said to you, until I played, the way you play. So I need some practice first, as I said.
It won't take you long, John. No, you won't take long at all.
But those sort of because we've spoken about it before, that those moments where you interact with people and you've got to play with different things, and it builds your character, and it is, like you say, it's all about people, mate.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I like it as a sport. So not only is it very challenging as a sport, it's one of the hardest ones I've played. It's sociable. It ticks all the boxes for me. It's competitive, it's sociable, and it's outdoors, which I think is really important. And in a world where there's so much, it's information overload, I feel, in the world sometimes now. You've got your emails, you've got your WhatsApps, you've got your phone going off every 2 seconds. Having 3.5 hours of a day just to say, listen, my phone's going in the bag, I think that's invaluable. I get some of my best ideas or best inspirational moments where I'm just walking down a fairway and I've got a couple of minutes to myself. I think for entrepreneurs that I've worked with over the years, that time to yourself is so important. I think it's really underrated. I don't know where this has come from in the world around this hustle hard and 5 hours sleep, but I was listening to even like Jeff Bezos, and his name is completely different. He's the world's richest man, but he's saying he needs 8 hours. And that was refreshing, just to hear someone like that say, right, I need 8 hours sleep a day because the next day I've got some really important decisions to make. So I do feel with entrepreneurship as such, there's some myths out there and some things which really aren't true, and it creates a wrong, I think, atmosphere and environment.
There's also, I think, I 100% agree with you on that, mate. I really do. And what is really interesting is that world you're going into now, or you're into, obviously the coaching world, they're going from a business, quite a high profile banking into a coaching world. How have you found that transition? And how have you found, I know the dreaded word COVID, we haven't used maybe COVID very often. So how's it been? And talk us through that journey of going from the NatWest on your own and making those decisions.
Yeah, no, well, being totally honest, John, it was a big risk. Like I said earlier on, as we were talking, I had a job which I absolutely loved. And in a fortunate position with that, but it also did prove a challenge because if I was being totally honest, and I've always wanted, before I got into the bank, I always thought about leadership roles and progressing and getting as high as I can. But when you've got something that's good, I don't think you should really throw that away so easy. But the risk I had is I could have probably done that job for 30 years. And you do then risk becoming stale and not challenging yourself because you get to it. So I just got to a point where I knew I wanted a new challenge, and I've moved into the world of self-employment. So for the listeners, I've set my own business in the past 6 weeks. This has been recorded beginning of May. So beginning of April is where I started, and it's AJ Entrepreneur Coaching, and I work with business owners to try and help their businesses grow at the end of the day and overcome any obstacles they might have. But going into that environment for myself, I think one of the most important things you can do when starting a business or running a business is surround yourself with the right people. That's why it worked in NatWest, and that's why there's been so many fantastic businesses come through the program. Is there is no point in you being sat at home on your own trying to run a business, because it can become quite an isolated place. For me, I'm going to go and first thing I'm going to do is get a shared office space, a co-working space somewhere where I can be around other like-minded people. And that's important because it's not just having that social side of things, it's learning from them is the most important thing. You don't know what you don't know. And within the coaching and what I've done over the years, John, it's people come in and I know there's someone else on the program or someone else that I know has been in that challenge before, and I just link them up. But that's what I'd say to anyone running a business out there is have a strong network and don't be afraid to pick up the phone to people. And just, I think some people, if you've got a challenge in your business, they don't pick up the phone because they don't want to look like they don't know what they're doing. But you're doing yourself no favors doing that. If you know someone who you admire or you think they've done something really well, pick up the phone and just pick their brains and ask that question.
Yeah, no, I love that, mate. I love that. So the $1 million question, what type or what sort of coach are you?
Yeah, it's that is $1 million question. I think your coaching reflects your personality in a lot of ways, and for me, action is a big thing. So where you talk about CrackOn, is providing clarity to the entrepreneurs and the business owners that I work with, so that they know what they need to do and they know when they need to do it by. So that approach, I'm very much performance focused in a way when it comes to the coaching side of things. So a lot of the business owners that I tend to work with, or I tend to attract, and the ones I like working with, is sometimes they're exceptionally good at what they do. It's just the other elements of the business and the support around them maybe isn't quite there. So what we end up doing is, where are you now? What are the obstacles and where do you want to be? And then I'm a key part of that, and I help them along the way. But it's, from my point of view, it's an outside perspective looking into the business. And that's why I think it works. When you're this is why I need a coach as well, is when you get so close to something, it's very difficult sometimes to know where you should be placing your time and energy, and you sometimes, quite often, put it into the wrong places, or you dabble with it, you do it for a couple of days, a week, and then it just goes by the wayside. So it's very easy to chase the shiny things, but if you actually dedicate some time and effort onto one thing, the results will come.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that we've obviously crossed paths through a mutual contact or friend or brother, my brother.
Yeah.
He brought us together, which was really nice. And we've had a couple of walks around Roath Park. And for our listeners, there's a lovely park in Cardiff, which is called Roath Park. And so we've walked around that a few times and had some really good walk and talks, haven't we? Just sort of what I found really fascinating is just batting some real good idea. Like you said, that shiny syndrome, that shiny subject, I've always been in that world, right? I'm getting better. I am getting better. My wife will vouch for that, I hope. I am getting better. But, as entrepreneurs, I still see it when I'm coaching people as well, that they see this, they see that, they see this, they see that. And then, all they need to do is sort of, actually, let's get it back to bare bones and concentrate on what actually is, what matters there and then, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, John. I think it takes time as well. One thing I'm going to struggle with, and it's never been a particular strength of mine, is I'm not the most patient of individuals. I will be honest with that. And I think people, you see other people who are maybe successful in business, and it's easy to fall into a trap of, they're an overnight success, or they're not. It takes time. I've seen it time and time again, where you don't see what goes on behind the scenes. And maybe that's a thing with the likes of social media and things like that, is you're only seeing the good parts, but you don't actually see the real story behind the scenes.
And I suppose that's what you see, don't you? I mean, you must have, when you were dealing with those 300 companies, you must have been seeing so many different types of business. I mean, you must have seen it all, mustn't you?
Yeah. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of commonality between them all.
That's what my question was, mate. What is that commonality?
It's hard to put it down to one thing. But if I was going to narrow it down to one thing, I'd say mindset, John.
Okay.
I think it's something that's never talked about enough, mindset. Like growing up, you go through school and it's never touched upon. And for the listeners out there, if I was ever going to recommend one book that I think people should go into about themselves, it'd be Mindset by Carol Dweck. So the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. And a lot of the time I've seen people who go on to become successful, or they make it, it's down to things like you touched on it, failure earlier. That's a massively important thing. It's going to happen to everyone. It's just how you respond to it. And do you learn from it? That's one thing. Feedback. Now that's difficult. People, you've got to have the right mindset to put yourself out there and to go for that feedback. But if you are running a business out there, when was the last time you went out to customers and asked for feedback? Like a story which goes through my mind, it drives me mad. But I used to go to a barber's, I won't say which one, and I went there for 2 years, really good relationship. But one couple of things used to really get on my nerves going there. I'd turn up at 10 o'clock for a haircut and I wouldn't get seen until 11:15. Right. And for me, it's one of those things, on time, it just drives me mad. And I went there for 2 years, didn't once ever send out a feedback form or anything like that. Right. And you end up losing customers because of it. But having the right mindset, take that feedback on board, it's a good thing. We can learn from it, we can get better as a person or an organization. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, and it's also, on that level, the issue I find with people with it is quite a two-way thing, that it's the ego. And actually, it takes a point at which you lose your ego. Now, I've spoken to you before about, I lost a business. And I tell you what, my ego went out the window then because I had to fight for things. But actually, what's really interesting when you give someone that feedback is that if they're not ready for it, they won't take it, mate, will they?
No, you've got to have the relationship to be able to give that feedback. You can't just say, can I just tell you something? Because they're going to be like, yeah, thanks, Anne.
Whatever.
Do one. So I think, it needs to be delivered in the right way, which is the most important. And at the end of the day, I'm not just saying it to have a go at you, and then you don't want someone to have that victim response, but I'm saying this so that you can get better. And I think within my coaching, that is a key part of it, is I'm there to provide feedback. You don't want to be that yes person all the time, because at the end of the day, I'm not giving my clients any benefit by just saying, yes, it's great. Because if there is a problem, you'd rather know.
Yeah, and actually, we spoke about again on those faithful walks that you can't be the most popular man in the room or person in the room, because that's never going to get that business moved on, is it?
No, John, you're spot on with it. And I think that's what, as it comes back to mindset again, is this people pleaser in everyone. You're not going to be liked by everyone. You, the listeners, everyone out there, you don't like everyone. So how can you possibly be expected to be liked by everyone? And I think that holds people back as well. Like when you're thinking about social media or doing things, you immediately go to the 5 people that aren't going to like it, rather than the 95% of people who are supporters of you and that it's on point.
Yeah, do you know the one I always use and I always like to use is Winston Churchill. How he formed his war cabinet. He formed his war cabinet with everyone who hated him, because he knew if he would, whatever decision he put out, he'd have everyone coming back at him, but you're always then going to get the best results. And that for me always stands. I love that I love the film anyway, and I love the history side of it. But that is so important, especially I bet with your coaching scenario and dealing with people, mate. Huh?
Yeah, no, absolutely, John. So I think, that people pleaser approach is a big thing. But if going back to your question, if there's one thing that I think separates, one theme that I saw throughout people who are trait was having the right mindset when it comes to business and when it comes to themselves as well.
So let's talk mindset with yourself then. Where's your mindset come from? So obviously, is it, from a young age, have you always been, we've mentioned being competitive. Where is the mindset, your mindset right now?
It's a lot better, John. I'm certain. So my mindset used to be shocking, for being totally honest. Not shocking, but it wasn't, I didn't know about it. I didn't know. That's the biggest thing with mindset. If you're not self-aware, you don't know whether you're in a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, or you're in a blame mentality, or you're actually taking responsibility. You're just not aware of it. Yeah. So where I got introduced to it was at the Natwest Accelerator Hub. In one of my first weeks in the bank, I thought, right, I'll go and find out, see what it's all about in a previous job. And a colleague of mine there was running a mindset workshop, and it was brilliant. And it was just like light bulb moment of, this is what I'd be missing. And it goes back to comfort zones. If you think about that, growing up, I always used to, nobody feels comfortable putting themselves out there in a vulnerable situation, like public speaking, for example. Growing up, I used to absolutely hate it. I try and shy away from it. I'm dyslexic, and growing up doing things like public speaking, if you just handed a sheet of paper, it would be my worst nightmare. But now I've just learned to deal with that.
So how have you learned? Because I know it's easy to say that, but how have you done it? Because I understand that's not an easy process. You've had to put yourself out of your comfort zone quite often then with that.
Yeah, look, I would say read about it. So things like Mindset by Carol Dweck and then the Chimp Paradox, but effectively you can learn about it all you like. It's then actually doing it. So for me, it was going out and actively thinking about uncomfortable situations that I'd be put in. One of them was public speaking, probably because of past things that had happened with being dyslexic, and it never used to really go well. But I ended up finding my own learning style, which is for anybody out there. I think that's one of the most important things I can say is, what's your learning style? For me, it's not picking up a book. It's actually, I've got an Audible subscription and it's absolutely amazing. And I live by that. And I learn through that, and I learn through watching videos, and that's my style.
Yeah.
For anyone out there, I'm going to be a lifelong learner. I love learning. I love reading new books, listening to new books. But it is developing that growth mindset. You've got to be patient with yourself, and it's over time, learning from previous mistakes, knowing that it'll get better. And in the book, without ruining it, which Carl Dweck talks about, it's, I can't do this yet. The most important word in all of it is yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, and I took that into golf, like John, like golf, for example. Like I'd say, so in terms of getting better at a sport, I've always wanted to, but God, go back 7, 8, 9 years. I was off like 13, 14. If I had a bad hole, head was gone, and that was the end of it. And I'd blame something, I'd blame the weather. You'd be in that victim mentality. And now, through understanding mindset, you can apply it to the game of golf quite well. It's come down to 3 now, the handicap, and I would put that down to nothing else but purely my mindset.
Yeah, and there's got to be an element, but with that mindset, there's also got to be the graft and the work in the background to make it happen, huh? So what you said about action, it's all well and good as thinking about doing something, but actually it's that getting up and taking that one step, which you said.
I think it's getting ahead of you, John. Like, I think that's one thing I've learned through having my own business, but I've always tried to do it, is getting ahead of myself. So like on a Sunday afternoon, it's like, right, what am I doing tomorrow? And then each day, what am I doing tomorrow? I think where people fall into the trap of not taking action is because it's not because they don't want to, it's just you just don't know what to do. So build a habit of being proactive rather than reactive. I love I interviewed I've got another coach, funny enough, coming up on this Friday's episode, which will be episode 10, series 2, Dan Stanley. And what he said, one of the things he said, which it really hit me home, was actually the only difference between a rut and a grave is the depth of the hole. And I just thought, and he said, but if you're in a rut, like you say, the rut is, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know the path. But if you don't know the path, you've got to create the path, and you've got to understand what that, you've got to create it yourself and take action, mate, isn't it? So I think that's such a powerful thing to say. Yeah, I think that's brilliant, Andy. And then when you said earlier on the podcast as well, John, you said about, people maybe in their 40s or 50s that maybe don't know what they want to do right now. The question I'd ask there is, well, what's the plan? Like, you've got to have a plan. I knew going into this role I did a few years ago, the plan was eventually I want to work for myself. And I speak to my mates a lot, and they're like, oh, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, or, well, okay, well, what do you want to do? What's the plan? Because that's down to you at the end of the day. Only you can do that. You've got to be able to help yourself, but having that vision and plan is probably really is one of the most important things. Okay,
so there's another bit then. So we would mutually know a lot of people that sit there and say, I hate my job, I hate this. And actually more so over lockdown, I've had so many people just not migrate to me for that reason, but I want to try and help them, and I want to try and put them through. But there's so many of those that I hate this, I hate that. What one sort of, I think you've alluded to in previous, but what one bit of advice would you give that person that literally just doesn't want to do what they're doing anymore?
It's a good question. Well, it depends what they want to go into. If they don't want to be an entrepreneurial business owner, I would be saying start looking for jobs. Sit down, actually think about, what do you enjoy doing? It's never too late to change things or do something completely different. So I'd say crack on and take a risk.
I wasn't plugging for that then, but I'm glad you said it.
I'll pay you later for that one, John. I would say you can take a risk. What's the worst thing that happened or could happen? Like, for example, that's like me leaving now. It's a big risk, but the way I look at it is, what's the worst thing that can happen? I back myself that I'll figure it out somehow.
And also get in touch with me.
Exactly. And I think the second bit is, okay, well, if you're not happy with what you're doing, having a small business or having a side hustle is something of interest to you, then start small with it. It's not going to be perfect. I think that's one thing I've realized with starting my own business is nothing's perfect, never will be. 7 out of 10 is good enough, because otherwise you end up procrastinating and sitting on it, and then that leads to another thing, and you just don't get stuff done. So start small with it, find a good community. Don't worry about a business plan. I know that's controversial, but people love sitting down and doing 50, well, maybe not love, but they'll sit down and do 50 pages of a business plan. And what action has been done through that? I'd rather sit down, and a tool I always used to use is business model canvas. Sit down, a couple of hours, do a business model canvas, draw it out. They've got an editable one on strategizer.com. And that's your starting point. But things like Welsh Ice, things like the Natwest Accelerator, things like Tramshed Tech, they're your starting points, really, is be part of a community.
Yeah, I love that, because actually that goes on to another question. How important do you feel networking is, network generally?
Oh, I think networking, John, I'll be honest. My networking, I don't do networking like going to networking events. My networking I've done throughout my life has been through friends or golf or Cardiff City or other things like that. That's how I've built my network. And I don't even think of it as a network, John. I think of it as just relationships with people. I hate the word networking. I really do.
Yeah. I joined the club with that one, mate. I totally agree with you. And actually, they're people, and then whatever they do. But actually, it's the person, and it's relationships, like you say.
Exactly. And I think the problem is with networking is people go in there immediately to try and sell something. Whereas you need to just go in there and say, "Hi, John, how are the kids? And how was your weekend?" Rather than going in and just saying straight away, effectively, "Will you buy this?" And that's my problem with it. Maybe that's why I shied away from it. Maybe I need to try it again. And it might be my assumptions. But whenever I used to do it in my previous role for the bank, it just didn't sit well with me.
Well, the thing is, mate, it's like anything in it. I find, you're either a kinesthetic or the gut feel. If the gut isn't right, then, and actually, if something's working for you or me, then why change that? Why not have elaborate and take it further? Because I'm in the same boat as you. I much prefer to go to rugby or football or a sporting event and meet someone on a level that actually I'll get on with rugby. If you get on with rugby, we'll talk rugby first.
Yeah, and then it's not forced. It's not forced, John.
No,
I don't like that environment of it being forced, of like, you're here to sell, I'm here to sell. A lot of my relationships and a lot of my coaching clients I've worked with have just come from getting to know them, getting to know their problems, and then that human element.
Yeah, and also they say, I don't know, not a really good podcast that I listen to. I'm plugging someone else's, but it's something that I listen to all the time. I spoke to you about the High Performance podcast. Yeah. And Johnny Wilkinson, the episode with Johnny Wilkinson, he talks about every day just doing whatever you're going to do as best you can that day. And what you're I'm going to give you some real good feedback, is one thing that you will do really well at is you will get a lot of referral business, because you look after your clients with that sort of level of intensity and you give them that feel, but you'll get referrals, which then the network develops itself, doesn't it?
I think going back to where you said one thing around successful people that I've done, it's quality over quantity.
Right, okay, that's interesting. Talk us through that.
Well, I just, like, whatever I do, I want to do it to the best of my ability. And if I don't, then I don't feel satisfied with what I've done. And that's through everything that I do, whether it's workshops, presentations, coaching sessions. I plan a lot, and it's important to me that I perform 100% or as close to 100% as I can get. I think it's very easy to chase the money. And I see it with service businesses particularly, where yes, you want to grow. I understand that. But the one thing that you don't want to do is quality drops, because if quality drops, word of mouth is quite powerful. And it's very easy to lose your reputation. Once you lose your reputation, it's hard to get it back. So I can't do things 50%. I think, without saying a cheesy saying, but it's play with passion or don't play at all. And that's how I've always done things. I don't want to do a presentation and try and make it up as I go along, or come on this and try and make it up as I go along. It's got to be right.
Yeah, and you know what? I spoke to you as well about my passion for NLP, and I'm actually moving on to do my master's. Hopefully, when this comes out, I should have passed it, I hope. But basically, I think the NLP part is really interesting with that, because everyone, as you alluded to earlier on, everyone is different. Everyone learns different. Everyone communicates differently. And that part of it is actually when you know yourself more, because that's what we do as coaches. We just put a mirror in front of people, don't we? And try and reflect what they're doing at the moment. And they come up with the answers, and we just we guide them in the right direction. No, it's a really interesting one, that, mate. But actually, that then comes back to either you're that person's coach or you're not. Because some people will not want that, will they?
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And like when I mentioned earlier about the 300 that I work with, they're not all going to be my ideal client. That can't happen. I maybe say 80, 90 of people that I really click with and I really work with. And that's important, that you sometimes have to say no, because you just don't feel like they're the right person, or it might not work out. And if you say yes, you go off your gut sometimes. It's your reputation at the end of the day. As a coach, I know I'm quite intense and the accountability is there and I'm challenging, and that doesn't work for everyone, and that's absolutely fine. And I will refer you to another coach or someone else I think can do a better job than me, because you've got to click on that relationship level, and they've got to understand you as a person as well.
I love that. There's such strength in no, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, I think even like you starting a new business, a lot of people that start their own business, a new business, actually potentially compromise themselves by saying yes too much. And like we're all guilty of it, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, John, it's the only loser when that comes around is the person themselves, unfortunately, because they give so much away and they say yes to so many things. But at the end of the day, they're the ones that come off worst. I know it's bad saying, it could be a selfish thing to say, but you can't say yes to everything.
But it's also, it comes back 360 to that bit you said, mate. We can't all be liked by everyone.
No, absolutely.
And that's where it's at. So talk us through the future then. Talk us through, Andrew Jones in 10 years time. Where do you see the next 10 years evolving for you?
I've always struggled. Do you know what? I've always struggled with these questions, John, because something could happen in 2 years' time and your life could completely change. It's so hard. If someone had asked me 10 years ago where I'd be, I honestly couldn't have said right now. I don't know, the coaching business side of things, I just want to try and help and support as many people as possible and build a brand and build a community of like-minded people. If that takes 10 years and I get there, then fine. But that's the objective, really, is to build that community.
You're on a journey, you're on a path, and I think I've only met you. We've gone for 2 walks so far, and we, that connection we've already got. If you get that with your clients, you're gonna go a long way with it, mate. I can see it. Thank
you, John. No, I appreciate that, and I can't put. I don't think putting a time on things is ever a good idea. I think with small goals that are manageable, for what I'm trying to achieve there, that vision, you might wake up one day and you think, we've got there, and I think that's important. But 10 years, it will be something along those lines. I think for the next 10 years for me, and the thing that I put in front of everything else is your health is the most important thing. Health is wealth. So things that have happened in my life with family members and things like that is you don't know what's around the corner. So 10 years from now, if I'm healthy and the business is going well, then that's good for me. Well, let me just reframe that. Let's take the 10 years out of it. What is your Everest? What is your, have you got something that you're going, right, I tell you what, I'd love to do this or do that or achieve this or achieve that? I think you have the sky's. I really do believe the sky's the limit. I don't want to say something without it being not too confident or anything like that. But when you look at people like Gary V, and I see some of the content that he puts out, I think he's just someone that I look up to, I admire, and I think if I can build a community or something along those lines, and I don't want it to be about me, but where I'm helping people, helping small businesses. And part of that, I want to be Wales, particularly. I think Wales, from coaching businesses in Wales, from coaching business across the Southwest and London, we've got a huge amount of talent in Wales. And I just don't think, maybe it's a mindset thing, I don't know. And I don't want to generalize, but I think there's a huge amount more that can come from Wales if we get things right. We've got some incredibly talented people, and they're working with people in London and Wales and Southwest. We're up there. I think it's just a mindset thing. And you mentioned COVID earlier. One of the things that I think COVID, there's a huge amount of opportunity out there. Yes, it's been a bad year, to say the least. Let's be honest.
Yes,
it's been tough on a lot of businesses, and particularly for your sector, the hospitality sector, it's been bad. But with anything like this, where there is disruption, there comes a huge amount of opportunity, and some of the best businesses come out of it. It comes back to that mindset piece of focusing on what you can control, what you can and what you can't is I think what a lot of great entrepreneurs in these times do. It's all I can't control COVID, but what can I do to make my business better or myself better? So I know we've gone off topic a little bit there, but
no. But you know what? Those bits you're saying, there's certain people, there's certain businesses we know. There's certain businesses that are going to come out of this COVID in such a great place because of what they've done throughout that pandemic, looking after their teams, looking at communicating to their people. You know, all those elements are going to put them in such good stead out of it. But there's certain other ones that haven't, and they won't. You know,
it's never been so accessible, in my opinion, John. If you think about Zoom as a thing, if you said to someone 16, 17 months ago, right, let's jump on Zoom for an hour, they'd be like, what? Whatever. Like, not what, but it would have been friction there. Whereas now, you say, right, let's jump on Zoom, it's normal. So for businesses out there, the market's never been so accessible. If I see my ideal client, and let's say they're based up in Edinburgh, there's nothing stopping me working with them now. So that's what fills me with confidence is the communication lines and the technology that we have to hand. If you use technology for good, then I think you're on the right lines. Yeah,
I totally agree, mate. Right, we've come to the last 3 questions then, mate. Okay, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Right, okay, so give me 3 non-negotiables to get into Andrew Jones's life or his world. What's the 3 non-negotiables?
I mentioned one earlier, is quality over quantity. That is something that I believe in, and the clients that I work with, I want them to believe in. It's I don't want to work with people that really care about what they do and they want to deliver the best service possible to their customers, and then you can scale that high expectations. Anything less or a half job done, it's just, that's not something that I really believe in, for being totally honest. Second one,
on the next one,
the second one, I'd say respect. That's the most important thing. So I respect other people and I treat other people how I'd like to be treated, and that's massively important. Depending on however well you've done in life, there's no excuses. You should always have good manners, and I think be punctual, on time. There's nothing worse than you set up a meeting with someone and they turn up half an hour late and they're sorry about that. It's that feeling.
On that one, Jess Morgan says, I loved it. She's at episode 7 or 8, I think, in series 2, and she says, when someone is late, you're actually disrespecting my time. So when you're late, you're saying to me you don't respect my time. I think that's such a powerful way of looking at it, and I have done. And in all fairness, my brother, call him out, Dave, even said that to me, that I'm listening to it as he turned up 5 minutes late. I said, here we go then, mate. But no, that's such a good one. What about the third one then, mate?
It's a little one. Going back to that, what makes you think your time is more important than mine? I think it's such an important thing. And the third one, I think this is a non-negotiable for me, actually, as a person, is looking after yourself. First and foremost, like I said earlier, your health is one of the most important things. And for you to perform to the best of your ability, you need to look after yourself. My well-being, going to the gym, the golf side of things, people think, it's a complete waste of time. It's not. It's what works for me. And that's the most important thing. We're all different. We all work in different ways. However you get your downtime, I think you need to protect that. Because if you don't, information overload and the amount of things we have going on in our lives now, it will lead to burnout and things like that. So for me, it's looking after myself is vitally important.
Yeah, love that. Love those 3, mate. Love those 3. Right. So biggest life lesson so far?
Biggest life lesson. It is a tough one. I think, without going on about it too much again, I think that health side of things, it is for me. Like growing up, my grandmother had MS, which is a terrible disease, and things in recent years through family members. I think it's so easy in life. We all do it. We sweat the small stuff, like an email's come through or a meeting's been cancelled or that it didn't go as well as I thought it might have done, that one meeting, or it's little things day to day where you're like, oh, for God's sake. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not important. If you think you're having a bad day, there's other people out there having a much worse day and they love to be in your position. Yeah, so I think sometimes in life, a bit of perspective is really important. And you need to catch yourself when you're having those days where you're feeling sorry for yourself, because the reality is we've all got it pretty good from where we are and what we in this country. There's a lot more people worse off. And I think that for me is the most important, is your health.
Yeah, I love that. Right, so last question. So any advice for, let's say you go back, 16-year-old Andrew Jones is stood there. What advice would you give him?
Get some golf lessons. No, I would say mindset is the most important thing. Yeah. It's okay to fail. That happens. It happens to everyone. It's not about that. It's about what you learn from it. I would say pushing yourself outside your comfort zone is a good thing. Don't shy away from it. Look at it as an opportunity rather than you're going to make a mess of something. And I think personally it should be in academia more. I think mindset is not touched upon enough, and it's incredibly underrated. So it would be a lifelong learner and focus on mindset.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Love it. Right, so someone sat there now, they've listened to this, they go, right, I cannot wait. Andrew Jones has to be the person that I want to be coached by. How do they get in touch with you, mate?
So you can, I'm on Instagram, so it's at AJ Entrepreneur Coaching, but I'm also on LinkedIn. By the time, maybe, when's this going live, John?
Probably in about 3 weeks.
Fine, 3 weeks. My website will be up by then. So ajentrepreneur.coaching.co.uk as well, if you want to check me out.
Cracking, mate. I tell you what, thank you ever so much for your time, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, mate. And you're an absolute crack-on guy. Can't wait for our walk around Oath Park again. We have got it in the diary, but thank you ever so much, mate, and ever so great luck with your coaching, and good luck with everything in the future.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. Absolute pleasure, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries, mate. Have a good day.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate. So there we go. Episode 1, Series 3. Andrew, for me, is just a real good guy who's got a real winning mentality headset. So that's what I got from it. That, I've spoken to Andrew before about his willingness to really go to the end to win. So with him being a coach now and him taking that big step and just cracking on his own, anyone who goes with him is definitely going to gain momentum and really have stringent goals in mind. I loved a load of the things that Andrew's went through, and he's now a good friend of mine. And that's what the podcast has done for me, is allowed people to come into my life and also impact and influence going forward. So really enjoyed it. I hope you did. If you did, reach out to Andrew, reach out to myself, get in touch. But there we go. Series 3, episode 1 done. Have a great one and crack on.
Crack on.